Recently I dropped a video on the channel giving my initial thoughts and first reaction to The House. In the time since Netflix released this animated anthology, the audience have been incredibly divisive. People are presenting all sorts of ideas about what they think The House means, or if there's even any deeper meaning to be had at all. In this deep analysis, I am going to offer up a more in-depth look at The House, offering my own personal interpretations, theories, and discussing themes and symbolism within it. If you agree or disagree with my following ideas, please be friendly in the comments. Art is subjective and people are identifying a variety of meanings in The House, so don't belittle others for offering their ideas. Don't argue, debate. It's a lot more fun. This video is designed for people who have already watched The House, so there will be spoilers ahead, or check out my previous video for a general breakdown and overview. I'm going to talk about several themes that I have spotted that link together the three stories. The first theme is money and materialism. In story 1, Raymond's family that visit their house are clearly more wealthy than him. They arrive in a horse and carriage and dress in extravagant clothing. They also comment about Raymond's father being a gambler who lost all his money and as such spoiled his relationship with the family and became an outcast. When Raymond is likened to his father, he becomes infuriated and begins drinking to numb the pain. Raymond hates being judged for not being as financially affluent as his relatives, and that instills jealousy and a desire to achieve more in order to prove his peers wrong. This is what leads him to making the deal with Van Scherbeek to give up his family's house in order to receive a new one. One of the terms of the agreement is that Raymond will receive the house for free. There's no financial risk presented to Raymond, so he doesn't have to think twice about jumping at the opportunity. He then receives a much larger, more beautiful house, full of luxurious furnishings and gadgets for he and his family to relish in. So for Raymond's character arc, he started off living rather comfortably until he was challenged and belittled for the little that he possessed, and retaliated in anger by giving up everything he built to grab something better. He wants the Van Scherbeek house to be a proving point to his relatives and to himself, but doesn't have to work for it or sacrifice anything. He's literally handed it on a plate. So in story 1, it's a lack of wealth that becomes Raymond's Achilles heel that leads him to destroy everything he grew, ultimately leading to his downfall. He recklessly decided his family's future for them just to make him feel better. This is the first negative energy money can inspire: greed. And there are a few things in the story that reflect this greed. Upon returning home from the carriage, Raymond greedily begins to eat a lot of food. Then in the new house, they are given a fully furnished dining room crammed up to the brim with food for the family to gorge on. There is also the subplot of the outfits given to Raymond and Penny by Mr. Thomas that resemble the furniture. The outfits are considered to be luxurious and reflect their newfound wealth, but by the end of the story, Raymond and Penny physically become the furniture. This is almost like a you are what you eat style scenario relating to materialism. A lot of wealthy people buy trophy items that symbolize their wealth, such as a supercar, diamond jewelry, or designer clothes. There are brands in the world that literally exist for the sole purpose of being symbols of wealth, but a consequence of buying into that lifestyle brings with it a stigma when being viewed by people who aren't as well off. The kind of people who show off their wealth are almost seen as having no personality. They become the things that they own. And in story 1, Raymond and Penny literally transform into the very fancy materials they gave everything up to chase. Their greed, especially Raymond's greed and lack of foresight, led to their downfall, and their fate is symbolic of what becomes of a person's reputation when they become careless with their wealth. Next in story 2, we see the second negative energy money can inspire: desperation. The developer tries everything he can to sell his house during a recession, a financially terrible time. He's in a horrendous financial situation, and we can see on his wall that he has many overdue bills that are backdated. He's deep in problems. He becomes obsessed with trying to fine-tune every single detail possible in the house in order to get a sale, and in doing so he buys into a materialism of his own. He crams the house full of all kinds of quirky gadgets like speaker systems and color-changing lights, furnishing the house with lots of bells and whistles that could be associated with progression and wealth, like the sewing machine or fireplace in story 1. But the rodents viewing the house pay no attention to these gadgets and are even physically put off by them being there. We are shown that the underlying issue with the house is in its structure. It's infested with insects and full of cracks. He tries to lure in a buyer by distracting them from the real issues like this with the gadgets, and it doesn't work. He truly believes that these gadgets are more important than the real skeleton of the house, and thus he puts more time and effort into surface level aesthetics rather than paying attention to the more important details. Yes, he does try to kill the insects off, but is unsuccessful, yet rather than putting in more focus to eliminate this problem, he fobs it off and rushes to cover it up with all kinds of distractions for the house viewers. And this leads to the developer's downfall, since he doesn't get a sale and therefore he doesn't get the money to help him out of his situation. If he only paid attention and was patient and persistent to polish the more important aspects of the house, he could have got a sale, but instead he was misguided by materialism. I'd also like to point out a symbolic image in the TV room. The wall has what appears to be two eye-shaped decorations with the fireplace resembling a mouth, as if the wall is a face. I think this could be a person who has also been absorbed into the house in the same way Raymond and Penny were. The position of the TV is where the brain would be, and the TV has no signal, symbolizing that the person that has been absorbed has lost their conscious or is dead, as no signal is being transmitted. They have been completely swallowed whole into the house. Continuing on in story 3, we see the third negative energy money can inspire: dependence. Rosa is totally dependent on money. She pleads with her tenants, Elias and Jen, that she needs money to fix the house. But the issue with this world is that all around the house, as far as the eye can see, the world is flooded. So even if Rosa received money, what exactly is she meant to do with it? Instead of money, Rosa is given fish by Elias and precious crystals by Jen. But in this world, Rosa has more use and need for fish than money. Elias even points this out and says that she needs to eat. And from Jen's angle, the crystals reflect a positive spirituality. Rosa is not strictly a positive person. She's actually quite close-minded and negligent to the world around her. It's as if she is blatantly ignoring the floods even being there and tries carrying on like everything is normal and that she is running a regular apartment building. If she accepted the world around her, she would understand that fish and even debatably the crystals have far more use in this world than money. Yet for her, money is the be-all and end-all for solving her problems, despite, from an outsider's point of view, it wouldn't change a thing. Rosa has tunnel vision with money, and that impacts her as a person, with the materialism in this story not being related to chasing it or trying to weaponize it, but instead by being hesitant to the idea of materials being repurposed for the better. She gets annoyed by her floorboards being ripped up by Cosmos and Elias to build a boat for Elias to escape. The floorboards have no purpose in the house really. The house continues to fall apart the longer Rosa stays there, and it's only a matter of time before the floods take over the house, in which case the floorboards would be ruined regardless. But Cosmos is an outsider who sees the floorboards differently and changes their function to do something more productive and help the situation. Rosa doesn't appreciate that the materials around her can be used to get her out of her situation, and instead she allows them to stand still and decay. Even the entire house becomes a boat courtesy of Cosmos's handyman skills, so he's taken materials presented to him and used his creativity to make them actually do something. So for Rosa, her problems are caused more by staying stuck in her own little world. The ones she loved and cared for left her and moved on to better things, but her fear of embracing a challenge of the unknown and being so focused on money is what led her to be stuck in this bad place in her life. Only the external help of Cosmos saves Rosa. He changes her view of the world and makes her realize changes can be made for the better simply by adjusting what she already had. She stayed still for too long and began to break down, just like the house. And that leads on to my next theme. The houses physically reflect their owners. So while on story 3, the house is in bad condition from a lack of self-care or proper attention, much like Rosa, and the house has an external force assist in making the house do something helpful and lead Rosa into a better life for herself, like Cosmos turning the house into boats for both Elias and Rosa. So continuing this theme, in story 1 we have 3 houses to discuss: the old house, the new house, and the dollhouse. The first house is quaint, comfortable, and later in the story, Mabel says that she hates the new house and wants to return to their old one. It may not have been perfect, but it was theirs and was a place that a lot of memories were made that were cherished. But when the new house is given to them, luring them in with possessions, their old house is slowly dismantled. Bit by bit, the family home is being taken apart and the materials are used to help construct the new house. In a similar fashion, Raymond and Penny become less and less like their original selves as they become blinded by wealth and greed. Later, when Raymond burns old furniture from the house, he is metaphorically destroying the memories of his old home and what the family once were, continuously burning his old life away. Only Mabel and Isabel, who are unaffected by Van Scherbeek's powers, are able to still find value value in their old possessions, when in the basement, Mabel reads Isabel one of their old books for comfort. Mabel and Isabel still have a connection to their original selves, and that is what helps them to survive, whereas Raymond and Penny want to get rid of their original selves one item at a time, and that leads to their deaths. Even the fire that ultimately kills Raymond and Penny spreads into the room via Mabel's dollhouse being on it. This was clearly an important item to the family. It was the most treasured possession of Raymond's daughter, and he's burned it to fuel his new desires. But this is the final straw that kills them. Arguably the most important and personal item in the original house is the last spark of humanity and love for his family that Raymond sacrifices, resulting in being the last spark that triggers the flames, becoming their most powerful. Then in story 2, the developer's house reflects the developer himself. He puts on really flash suits, wears a headset, has a smartphone, despite us seeing him living in poor conditions in shabby clothes when not in view of the public. He dresses himself to near perfection for the viewers. Again, just like the house, he's trying to cover up deep-rooted problems with surface-level ones. He's on the verge of financial collapse and poverty, but feels like he needs to make himself appear like he's a flash person as a kind of false impression. And this reflects the gadgets in the house, attempting to mask the infestation and more underlying problems. Then there's the developer's subplot of having clearly a deeper problem in the, shall we say, woodwork of his being. The obsession with calling his dentist and creating a fantasy for himself. Underneath the developer's surface, he has an infestation, just like the house being infested by the insects in the walls. Here, his fantasy world and his obsession reflect the insects, and this stitches together noticeably with the whole insect choreographed dancing scene. It sticks out like a sore thumb in the story and doesn't match the mechanics of the world we see. The insects here are more like a fantasy imagined by the developer. Insects are imagined, dentist being his lover obsession is imagined, insects thematically linked to the obsession. Next theme I would like to discuss is the fact that in each of the 3 stories, all the homeowners are impacted by an outside force working their way in for better or worse. In story 1, Van Scherbeek and his team invade Raymond's family and take their house from them. In story 2, the vermin invade and take over the developer's house, and in story 3, there's the constant threat of the flood making its way closer to the house, but the outside force of Cosmos is what leads to Rosa actually being saved. So let's go through these and see what each of these forces may represent. Van Scherbeek is a person who is himself greedy. He wants to take Raymond's land and offers a snap your hand off type deal to get it, and in the end he gains the souls of Raymond and Penny for his house. In my previous video I couldn't work out exactly what Van Scherbeek wants, and I'm still uncertain. It's like he wants to lure in innocent people and convert them into materials that therefore become something with an added value for him. It's as if he is happy to sacrifice good innocent people for his own financial gain and keeps on building an empire via immoral means. Then there's the vermin, who I think mirror the insects in the house. They're an infestation of their own, and even their bodies are more insect-like in design, being elongated and moving more on their fronts rather than on 2 feet like the other regular animals. Even at the end of the story, when the developer becomes vermin-like, he switches to crawling as well when he burrows his way into the oven. But the developer is a troubled person with scatterbrained emotions and is taken advantage of by the large couple who stay for free and ask for cups of tea. The vermin work their way and invade the developer's life, taking the house for their own before feasting on it, and I think, like Van Scherbeek, they have gained something that satisfies and empowers them by overpowering weak, vulnerable people. Previously for story 3, I made a point that I thought the flood represented death. Always there, limits people as it's guaranteed to every living being, and always draws in closer. Rosa stays put and allows the waters to come closer to her, like she's accepting her fate. But then Cosmos comes in and makes Rosa think differently about the floods. The water is a limitation to Rosa, but like the floorboards in the house, Cosmos makes Rosa see that the water can be repurposed and viewed completely differently as an opportunity. You can have a totally different outlook on life with how you see death. If you see it as inevitable, what's the point of doing anything productive? You'll suffer and lose people. But equally, you can accept it and be free and adventurous, living each day one by one and making the most of life with the landscape presented to you at your doorstep. So Cosmos being an outside force that resembles freedom, positivity, spirituality, and happiness is what gives the outside force of the flood new meaning for Rosa. Of course here, Rosa, Elias, Jen, and Cosmos head off into the light of the horizon, and here I want to bring up my final theme, which is lights and their different meanings. So the light of the sun in story 3 is heading towards potential happiness. In story story 1, Raymond and Penny become hypnotized by the lights of the fireplace and the lights in the dining room, and initially Raymond is lured towards the light of Van Scherbeek's carriage. Here the light has the power of blinding the family. It makes them ignore their own children and neglect them. The lights at the dinner table lead to Mabel having to put a tired Isabel to bed instead of her own mother and father, and then the lights of the fire make Raymond want to burn his possessions, which, as discussed previously, leads to his and his wife's demise. A very different meaning for the light here. And then in story 2, the main light is the colour changing light, being one of the developer's gadgets to try and impress the viewers, but then dropping his smartphone causes the lights to malfunction and flicker quickly to different colours, producing another kind of hypnotic effect when the vermin talk to Raymond about wanting to move in. The light here not only reflects the materialism theme, but also continues on the hypnotism theme from story 1 and visually strengthens the vermin, effectively brainwashing the developer before their eventual taking over of the house. So there we go, a lot of ideas and theories there, and as said previously, if you would like to discuss them in the comments with either myself or other YouTubers, please do it respectfully to make sure we can all share our own thoughts about an incredible piece of work. Remember that we all see things in our own way and that nobody is truly right or wrong. It is really cool chatting about it though. So I hope you enjoyed this deep analysis. I'm Connor from Unleash the Ghouls, and thank you for watching. Cheers!